Well, look at verse 3. David fixed his heart and fixated on his physical desires, so immediately his mind starts clicking in. He starts rationalizing about his wrong decisions. So David sent and inquired, verse 3, about the woman. Now look, here's his warning. This is the only one he got that's recorded, but he got it. And some brave soul said, wait a minute, that's Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam, the wife, underlined, of Uriah the Hittite. Now obviously, David was in the picking up, more for his harem mode at this time, and this was a socially accepted thing of the day. It wasn't right. It was against God's plan, but it was socially acceptable. It was immoral, and it was against God's revelation, but it was acceptable. And so he would send scouts out, and they'd check out this one, and they'd come back and tell him how much she'd cost and, to get her. But the scout that went out this night to check out the bathing beauty comes back and says, that woman's married. You should have known that, David. Her house abuts your house, and her husband works for you, and he's a good friend of yours, but she's married. So, the servant said, that will kill that. But look what verse 3 says, or verse 4. So David sent messengers, multiple, obviously probably not the same one, we don't know, God doesn't tell us all the details. But see, for a moment, he thought about it. He was confronted with, don't do that. The seventh command, don't commit adultery. God says, don't do that. He knew it. He copied with his own hands, the law of God, don't multiply wives. And in that second, he was confronted with his wrong desires. He was confronted with the conviction that he shouldn't do it. And he starts the endless process of rationalization. It's only once. No. Her husband's old anyway, probably she doesn't like him. Just all the endless comments. But look, he immediately in verse 4 dives into the life of lustful sin. And he took his whole life in verse 4 and descends it into lustful sin. He gets these messengers, they took her, she came to him, he commits adultery with her, and when she purified herself from her uncleanness, she goes back home. That's kind of an antiseptic presentation of it, isn't it? There's nothing prurient in that verse, is there? But David had degenerated into sin. He had descended into lust. And then, continuing in verse 5, and the woman conceived. Oh, wait a minute. What does James chapter 1 say? Let no man say when he's tempted, I'm tempted of God. God can't be tempted with evil. He doesn't tempt any man. But every man is tempted when he is enticed of his own lust. And then when lust has conceived. Verse 5, David's lust literally conceived. And she sent and told David and said, I am pregnant. And so what is David's first response? Verse 6. He covered his sin. David sent to Joab and said, send me Uriah the Hittite. And Joab sent Uriah to David. And we don't even need to go through all that. We know what happens. He brings him home. He wines and dines him. He even intoxicates him. He shoves him in his house. And Uriah stands out monumentally as a man of God. He is a man that is so concerned for God's honor and God's people and God's army, and so set against God's enemies that he would not even enjoy the lawful and his personal enjoyment he could have of his own wife. He says, I'm going to abstain. I'm going to fast from all pleasure until God's work is done. Uriah is the man after God's own heart in this situation. David tries to cover his sin. Verse 22. Look at chapter 11, verse 22. The messenger departed and came and reported David all that Joab had sent him to tell. This is the cooked up murder plot that they put Uriah. You remember they put him they put him right at the bottom of the wall so they could throw rocks at him and dump oil on him and shoot arrows at him, and he gets killed. And David's heart is hardened. And the messenger said to David, verse 23, the men prevailed against us and came out against us in the field and pressed them to the entrance of the gate. Moreover, the archers shot at your servant from the wall. So some of the king's servants died, and your servant Uriah the Hittite is also dead. And David said to the messenger, listen to the utter hypocrisy and the deceitfulness. You shall say to Job, don't let this thing displease you. It sure doesn't bother me. You can read between the lines. For the sword devours one as well as another. Make your battle against the city stronger, overthrow it, and encourage him. And when the wife of Uriah heard that Uriah, her husband, was dead, she mourned for her husband. And when the time of mourning was over, David sent and brought her to his house, and she became his wife. But look at this. And this is the bottom line of every time we descend our life into lust. But the thing David had done was evil in the sight of the Lord. Lust is horrible.